I had a more classy place in mind when my fiancé, Evan, called and told me to get dressed, that he was taking me out to celebrate our engagement, which is why I wore my pearl necklace and earrings. Our taxi drove down a street in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood that was crowded with clubgoers waiting to get into Limelight, the hottest club in town. I couldn't believe he dragged me here. What was he thinking? I faced him. Of all the places in the city, why here? Strip clubs are disgusting.
Let's just enjoy the moment. And besides, Gary wants to show us a good time.
Evan's friend, Gary, met us at the door. We followed him to the VIP section on the second floor where he introduced his girlfriend, Hannah. "Congratulations," Gary blurted out. "So, when is the big wedding?" "We haven't decided yet," I said. "You guys should totally do a destination wedding," Hannah said from her seat. "My sister-in-law had her wedding in Cabo. It was everything." I tried my best to hide how uncomfortable I was, especially when a half-naked girl walked past carrying a platter of sushi. While Evan and Gary caught up, I stood at the railing that overlooked the entire nightclub. Hannah joined me. She leaned against the railing and looked down at the dancers. "It makes you feel insecure, right? God, I need to go to the gym, or start back starving myself," she joked. She looked at me. "Your body is killer. Do you work out? Don't tell me that you're one of those naturally thin girls." Hannah focused back on the dancers. "Could you ever see yourself doing this? Stripping?" "Not really. I mean, look at these girls. How do they even sleep at night?" Hannah was indifferent. "I don't know about these girls, but when I danced, I slept like a baby." I regretted ever saying anything. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you." "It's all right. I don't come from money and times were hard." Hannah lowered her empty drink. "I've had way too many mojitos. Come to the washroom with me?" On the way to the washroom, a waitress bumped into Hannah. A drink from the platter spilled onto Hannah's shirt. "I am so sorry." Hannah was kind about it. "Don't worry, I'll just stick my shirt under the dryer." Hannah continued to the washroom. I helped the waitress pick up a few of the napkins. I handed them to her. And when I did, I recognized her. "Marisol? Marisol Gonzalez?" We both were reluctant to hug, and when we finally did, it was quick. Marisol was wearing yellow tight spandex shorts that hugged her hips and a white tube top that had Limelight written across the low-cut bust. "The last time I saw you, we were both 14 years old," Marisol said. Marisol noticed the ring on my finger. I shyly moved my hand. "My fiancé, Evan, proposed last night. We're here celebrating with some of his friends." "Congratulations." "Thank you. So, how have you been? How is Mrs. Gonzalez, your mother?" After I asked about her mother, her mood went gray. "She passed away last December. Breast cancer." "I'm so sorry." Hannah finally joined from the washroom. "See, you don't even notice." I told Caitlin that it was nice seeing her, and then I got back to work. I joined my coworker Farah behind the bar. She was busy drying glasses. She was wearing the same outfit as me, except she has platinum blonde hair and the thickest coat of mascara anyone could possibly achieve. "I am so clumsy," I said. Usually Farah would tease me, but she was more interested in Caitlin. She watched Caitlin pass by and rolled her eyes. "Who comes to the club wearing a tweed Chanel jacket, pearls, and their hair in an updo?" "Apparently people who are rich." "Since when do you know rich people?" "My mother used to housekeep at her family's estate in Bedford." "And who exactly is her family?" "The Smiths. Her father is the CEO of Westbridge, the insurance company that's worth billions." "I've heard of it. They have shitty commercials." Farah looked up at Caitlin, who had already returned to the balcony. "Look at how she looks down on us. She thinks we're complete scum for working here, but most women who wear pearls do." "Yeah, well, some of us are scum," I joked while sorting the napkins. "And by some of us, I mean you." "You bitch." The next day, I got dressed in a black gown for a dinner party at my family's estate in Bedford. Our 10,000 square foot home sits on 5 acres, has a guest house, a pool house, and a small cottage tucked away in the woods. During cocktail hour, everyone congratulated me on my engagement to Evan, who was unable to attend because of his little sister's ballet recital. After dinner, my dad found me in the library looking at the portrait of Mom that hung above the fireplace. Holding a glass of red wine, he joined me.
I remember the day when your mother took this photo. We spent that entire summer in Greece.
Hey, Dad, do you remember Mrs. Gonzalez?
Of course I remember Mrs. Gonzalez. She worked for us for nearly 14 years. Why?
I found out that she died last year, from cancer.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
My father's assistant, Brian, entered with a worried look on his face.
Can we go somewhere private to talk, Mr. Smith?
I'll leave you guys the room. I rejoined the party and could hear a helicopter hovering above the house. I brushed past everyone and saw they were gathered, watching the news. The news reported on Westbridge, saying that the company was accused of committing fraud. Even my father's photo showed in the corner. Soon after, everyone began whispering to one another once the live overhead footage of our house played on the TV. When Brian joined, I confided in him. "What is happening, Brian?" Brian didn't answer. Instead, he dodged all the sketchy looks from the guests and led me to the library where my father was. I woke up in a small studio apartment that was 3 times smaller than the closet in my old apartment on the Upper East Side. 9 months had gone by, and my life was unrecognizable. After my father was found guilty of laundering money for Westbridge, he was sentenced to federal prison. Our estate in Bedford was seized, and shortly after, Evan broke off our engagement. On my way to get groceries, I ran into my landlord. He confronted me about being 2 months behind on rent and threatened eviction. Even though I didn't have it, I promised him the money soon. At the grocery store, I was $4 short. That was until the girl in line behind me offered to pay. It was Marisol. We ended up leaving together. How have you been since everything happened with your dad? I could lie and tell you that everything is fine, but it's been rough, I admitted. Everything is gone. The houses, the cars, my inheritance. I've only managed to afford the place I have now because I sold all my handbags. And still, I'm close to being evicted. What about your fiancé? Can't he help? I haven't heard from Evan since after my father was sentenced. Well, what about all those politicians and millionaires your dad was friends with? Maybe you can ask them for help. Like my fiancé, they don't want to be associated with me or my family. I waitress every now and then, but because my last name is tarnished, I always get let go. I'm sorry, Marisol said. Hey, I know you think lowly of it, but I make good money at Limelight. Thanks, but I can't work in a place like that. It's not as sleazy as you think. You don't have to be a dancer if you don't want to. You can waitress. And believe it or not, the tips are huge. Just the other day, some rich guy tipped me $300 just because he was in a good mood. Listen, I'd hate to see you put out on the street, so just think about it. If you change your mind, stop by and I'll put in a good word with my manager. I returned home to an eviction notice on the outside of my door. I laid in bed and silently cried. I resented my father for ruining my life. And I hated that I ever saw a good person in Evan. All I wanted was to hear my mother's voice telling me that everything would be okay. At 8:30, I finally pulled myself from bed. I got dressed and took the bus to Hell's Kitchen. I stood outside of Limelight, staring at the neon sign and felt the lowest I ever had. But still, I crossed the street and went inside.
For monthly episodes, check out the link to my Patreon page. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.